Hey, folks, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Clay Telfer, and I'm a customer success executive who spent the last 13 years building, scaling, and leading customer success and customer experience functions at hyper growth SaaS startups. I've got three successful acquisitions and a CXPA award, and none of this actually tells you whether I know how to write a decent email or not. So I'm going to spare you the 5 minute introduction and we'll get right to why you're here, teaching you how to email like a real person. Now, I've been telling people about this for more than a decade now, and one thing I've learned is that some people can get very skeptical about this stuff. So I'm going to start with some hard numbers that will tell you that I know how to write a damn good email. At Snack Nation, we went from 62% to 93% of customers rating us as world-class customer service. That's a gain of 31 percentage points, and we did it in 11 months. At TigerLead, we tripled our clients' response rate from their customers by teaching them this new mindset and the techniques that go with it. And at TutorMe, we had a CSAT of 99% over a full year. And that's true CSAT, not the thing where you take out all the angry customers and the mean customers so you can have better numbers. No, this is no exceptions, no exclusions. Every single customer ticket for a full year, 99%. So that's what I've done with these email strategies. And now I'm going to teach you how to do it too. I'm going to start by walking through what we need to stop doing, and then I'm going to go through what we need to do instead. And at the end of this talk, you're going to have just 10 action items that are going to completely revitalize your emails. So let's get right into it. The first thing we need to stop doing, and honestly, this is the hardest part. If you can do this, you're 75% of the way there. We need to stop writing letters when we should be having a conversation. Let's back up a second and look at how we ended up here and why so many people have trouble getting out of this mindset. So, email was invented in the 70s, and at the time it was based on mail, which was invented always. And for most of email's life so far, it really was an electronic letter. But somewhere around 2010, that started to change because once everyone had smartphones, an email could be either a letter or a conversation. But most companies are still treating email as if it's a letter, which is a big problem because the rules and etiquette for a letter are entirely different than they are for a conversation. And if you're my age or older, you were probably taught in school how to write a letter. Dear sir, I hope you've been having a wonderful day. Things are great over here. Blah, blah, blah. Thank you so much. Sincerely, yours truly, with love, Clay Telfer. Now, it's great for a letter, but I want you to imagine that I walk into a bar and I sit down next to someone I already know and I turn to them and I say, Dear sir, I hope you've been having a great day. I'm doing well and have recovered from my allergies. I was hoping to ask you how everything's going with you. Thank you and have a great day. Sincerely, Clay Telfer. Now, that's obviously ridiculous, right? So, why are we doing that every single day with our emails? And like I said, this is the hardest part because so much of this is so ingrained in people. But once you start thinking this way, everything else I'm going to tell you today starts to feel very natural. Oh, and one more thing here. If you want your customer to reply to your email, you need to have a conversation. People reply to letters a lot less often than they reply to conversations. If you've got a customer you just can't seem to get a reply from, it's a good idea to check whether you've been writing them letters or starting a conversation. Second thing you have to change, stop using marketing and sales strategies for customers. Seriously, just stop. Don't ever use another one until it's been tested on customers. And this isn't because there's anything wrong with marketing or sales. It's because marketing and sales are talking to strangers. They deal with prospects. You deal with customers. Prospects are strangers, but customers are people you already know. And the funny thing about this is that everyone knows you can't talk to a stranger the same way you talk to people you've already met. And yet everyone keeps saying, this works for marketing and sales, so it must work for customer communications too. Now, this is when somebody says, Clay, are you saying marketing and sales don't know how to write a good email? Absolutely not. I'm saying that marketing and sales teams know how to write a great email for prospects, and that blindly applying those techniques to customers is like feeding dog food to your cat. It'll get the job done in an emergency, but it's missing a lot of the nutrients they need, and in the long run, it will literally kill them. And that's what we've done all over the world. We've built customer facing emails around things that work for prospects, and then we wonder why we're all malnourished. Third thing, stop making yourself sound like a corporation. And this one seems easy. Everybody thinks they agree with this one, right? Everybody says, no, I don't, no one wants to sound like a corporation. But when you get down to the details, people get very resistant. So let's get specific about some of the things that means. Stop using signature blocks. Just stop. Seriously, just stop. I've worked with companies where I doubled their response rate just by turning off these giant signature blocks and replacing them with a simple Claytelfer at the end. You can include the title and the phone number with that if you need to. When I've tested it, that doesn't hurt response rates too much. It's not really a big deal. But that big signature block, that's not something you get from a person. It's something you get from a corporation. And you want another one? Stop doing everything you see here. We've received your request. Please type above this line. You know who sends emails like this? Corporations. And whenever I say this, people always go, we have to include that because, yeah, I know why you include it. I've been doing this for 13 years, but everything you think you're getting by doing this, you can get in ways that don't make your customers think they're talking to Time Warner Cable. And when your customers get an email from one of your team members, it should look like an email that came from a person. And if somebody starts to talk to you about, oh, but the industry best practices, remember that another way to say best practices is the same crap all our competitors are doing. We can do better than that. Here's the last thing you're doing wrong. Please stop talking like an asshole. And I don't know why this is, but a remarkable number of people sound totally normal most of the time. And as soon as they write an email, they sound like a complete asshole. And to be clear, I'm not talking about being nice to people because if you're listening to this talk, you'd better already be on top of being nice in your emails. I'm talking about stuff like this. Hi, Maria. I'm inquiring about what transpired regarding your query vis-a-vis finding yourself unable to recollect your password. What the hell does that mean? Who talks like that? Oh, we want to know if Maria got her password reset. Okay, just say, hey, Maria, did you get your password reset or do you need help with that? And remember what I said about if you walk into a bar and talk to someone the same way you write a letter, it's the exact same thing. Any email you send, if you're having a conversation, you should be able to walk up to someone and say your email word for word and have it feel natural and normal. And that's actually the fastest ways to get your employees to break this habit. Every time you catch them writing an email like this, have them sit down next to you and say the email to you word for word. And they will immediately feel how weird and awkward it sounds. And once they feel it, they will improve real quick. Now, whenever I talk about any of this stuff, people always say, will that work in my industry? And the answer is yes, with one single exception. Leave as soon as it gets legal. If you're talking to a lawyer, if the customer is threatening to sue, if it's anywhere near the realm of legal action, walk away and ask your legal counsel how to reply. Seriously, if your customer says the word lawyer, hands off, get your legal counsel. Do not take any of this advice. That is an entirely different realm, and you're going to need legal counsel for that. If it's not a legal matter, then yes, this will work in your industry too. Okay, so you've learned a lot about what to stop doing, and now we're going to talk about what you need to be doing instead. And we're going to start with test things for yourself. Like I said earlier, marketing and sales teams are usually very good at things like A/B testing and iteration, but I don't see nearly as much among customer-facing teams. And you have to be testing things for yourself because no matter how much you trust someone else's test results, there might be all kinds of differences between their company and your company. I see this a lot with B2C versus B2B, where people will take something that's been thoroughly tested for B2C and just blindly apply it to B2B. Or they'll assume that something that doesn't work for B2B, that can't ever work for B2C. And that's just one example, but there's dozens of things like this. And that's why you have to test. I have a lot of confidence in what I'm teaching you today because I've tested every single thing I'm telling you across multiple industries. But when you go home and make some of these changes, you should still test them. And if you get bad numbers, you can figure out what's not working and you can fix it. And if you get good numbers, then you can go show your boss what a great job you're doing. Next up, start following conversational rules or conversations. And we talked about some of the letter writing conventions you need to avoid, but even beyond that, remember that an email thread with a customer should flow like an in-person conversation. For example, if a customer writes in with an issue, stop sending them 7 paragraphs of text to cover every possible iteration of that issue. And if that's how you have conversations, maybe get some coaching on that too. But instead of that, just say something like, I'm sorry about that, and I can definitely help. Is the problem happening when X or when Z? And when they give you the specifics, now you don't have to monologue about 6 issues they don't have to cover all your bases. Now you can just answer their specific issue like a real person would if you were having a conversation. And I know a lot of you can't do that because you have to solve it all in a single email because that's one of the metrics you track. Yeah, stop tracking it. It's a trash metric. And if you're going to say, but customers like it better this way, how do you know? Did you test it? Can you show me the numbers? Because I've got a ton of numbers that say clients like it better my way. I showed you some of them 10 minutes ago. And the point of this is not that first contact resolution is a trash metric, although it is. The point is that eventually you have to ask yourself, do the metrics work for you or do you work for the metrics? Because if the metrics are getting in the way of doing things right, you're working for the metrics. All right, next up, keep writing letters when you don't want a conversation. For example, sometimes you need to make sure people don't reply. If you got an email blast 50,000 customers about a service outage, if they start replying, your whole team is going to drown. And I imagine most of us have been through that nightmare once or twice and never want to go through it again. So in a situation like this, we're going to lean hard into those letter writing conventions. Now, we still don't want to sound like a corporation. We don't want to overload them with way too much text, but we can use these conventions to keep response rates down. Start with a traditional opening, keep your language slightly formal, use a big signature block, end with the words, we're here if you need us, instead of thank you or sincerely yours, things of that nature. And remember, there's nothing inherently wrong with writing a letter. The problem is when we're writing letters to customers who are trying to have conversations. And generally, if you're emailing with a customer, they're trying to have a conversation. All right, next up, write in your natural voice. And this applies whether it's a letter or a conversation. Make sure you're writing in a way that's natural for you. And I'm not saying you can't use big words or fancy words. It's just that you shouldn't use words you don't use in everyday life. And this is why some people can write emails full of $10 words and not sound like an asshole. Because it's just, oh, yes, this is how this person talks all the time. It flows very naturally for them. So it doesn't sound weird when they start using all of these words. So again, if you're having a conversation, you should be able to say your email to someone sitting next to you without either of you feeling like it's weird or awkward. As long as that's true of your email, you're already in very good shape. Now, if you're writing a letter, that doesn't work exactly because it's not supposed to sound quite as conversational. When I'm writing a letter, what I usually ask myself is, could I say this to an audience like I'm doing right now and have it sound natural? Even if the letter is just to one person, could I say it in the format of a talk like this one? And it's not a perfect analogy because a lot of the time you are writing letters to a single person and you're probably not giving talks to a single person. But I found that it's still useful because it frees you from the conventions of a conversation while still making sure it's something that sounds natural for you. If you can't present it naturally, then it probably shouldn't be written that way in your email. One last thing. If you want a reply, use a question mark. This is so stupidly easy that you won't believe how effective it is. If you've got question marks in your email, people are so much more likely to reply. And if you really want to reply, end your email with a question mark. No, thank you, or sincerely, or anything else, aside from maybe like an unobtrusive signature that says your name, the last character of your email, make it a question mark. And it makes it so natural for the client to reply and borderline rude if they don't reply. And I'm telling you, man, you take this to the clients where you've been trying to get a response from them for 2, 3 weeks. You send them an email that's 3 sentences long and ends with a question mark. You'll be amazed how many of them send back a reply right away. And that's it. That's everything I've got. Just 10 things. And once you start doing these, you are going to see such great results that you can finally stop cheating on your CSAT scores and start reporting the real ones with all the tickets included. Now, if you've got any questions on this, just send them to me on LinkedIn and I'll answer every single one. There is another Clay Telfer on LinkedIn, and unbelievably, he is also a redhead. I'm going to show you how to tell the difference real quick. So you can see here, his hair is short and it's not curly, and also he is a cat, whereas my hair is long and pretty curly, and I am not a cat. So if you keep that in mind, you should be able to figure out which one to send your questions to. All right, thank you all very much. Let's go write some amazing emails.